Welcome to Spirit Sessions of You, the Light, or afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome. Big hugs to our whole Spirit Sessions family. You won't believe it. I forgot to bring my sage. I can't believe it. How many shows have I brought my sage? So today I will use my smoky quartz, and I will raise the vibrations of everyone watching, and I will, remove any negativity lingering around. And here, look at Rhonda's got what, selenite, so
Selenite.
we
Yeah.
we still got you all covered here. So welcome, come in for some nurturing, and today we are going to do some brain picking. We have an amazing scientist with us, a beautiful mind that you could ask anything you could ask about. You'll see. We can't wait to listen to him. So, Rhonda, tell us about Mark.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Fiorentino, and I'm going to let Mark introduce himself. But Mark is, when we were all just kids playing with our toys, Mark decided that Einstein would be his hero. He was born on Einstein's birthday, and he thought, well, I think it was you had to figure out what day a saint was born on your birthday. That was a saint day. Well, there was no saints born on Mark's birthday except the patron saint of physics, um, Albert Einstein, which I would call. So he decided that Einstein would be his hero, and that's how he got connected at the first place with him. And that's kind of a strange starting point for any child. Like, oh, Einstein, and it just has spiraled from there, Mark, hasn't it? It's just gone on from there. And well, most of us, when we retire early, we think about gardening and golfing. Mark's decided to take on a problem that has Einstein didn't get to solve, which was the unified field theory. And I can't even say it properly today. So, Mark, please give us a little bit of, sorry, COVID brain. Please give us a little bit of your background and how you ended up with this wonderful theory evolving into something that actually is re-put back together into a cohesive unit of things that make sense.
Sure. Well, I'm a self-taught metaphysician, so I'm not a physicist. I want to make that clear. Although I studied physics and I studied philosophy, in particular, concentrating deeply on classical physics like Einstein had in mind, and Maxwell and Newton and Lorentz and Faraday. They were the key guiding factors in their work. I followed that path, Einstein's path, uh, to a natural conclusion. So over the years of much thinking and much reading and study, I came to the conclusion Einstein, for the most part, was right. He was on the right path, although he kind of still in some ways denied a physical continuous ether substance that space was made of. He used formulas that kind of used that idea, even though he did not want to directly claim that there was an ether, except in one speech that he made to Lorentz in the Netherlands in 1920, where he then said there was an ether. So I just worked that problem, and over time, I found out by reading some of his other work uh, that he was looking for the same things that I was looking for. That being a geometry, a dynamical geometry that would explain how particles develop mass. And I did find that geometry eventually in a near-death experiencer's experience, and then I was able, once I saw how it looked, I was aware of its model, and then I followed through and created the math and wrote the paper that explains exactly how all particles, generate mass, and why the one particle that doesn't have any mass doesn't generate mass. It all fits together nice and neat and orderly and sensibly, unlike the many explanations and interpretations that come from quantum mechanics, which never really makes sense. So that's how I got to this point. And I decided to write about all this. And after 4 years, I had a completed book. And then from there, I started going out and talking about it. Well, who's going to promote this? If it isn't me, I don't know who is. It's my job, my responsibility, and I accept that as part of my life now. And that's how we got here.
So your theory, uh, you've put it out there, and so other scientists are now looking at it and arguing and debating and everything, like what always happens
Yes,
with
I
their.
try what I could do. I put out, it's a 50-page paper in ResearchGate. There's one that precedes it that I use. I determined something. I had to determine this, and I determined the speed of which quarks move inside of neutrons and protons. And I developed this
Oh,
model. You see, this is what was seen by the near-death person who was in the
oh,
presence of God, and this with some other geometries is what she saw. It's
the
called
Trinity.
a
Isn't that
trefoil knot, a
interesting?
trinity. So there's a
Mm.
weird sort of something going on with the Trinity. Somehow they, back in those days, they made a connection. The three dimensions, the this knot is a trefoil knot, and I knew when I started looking for it that it was going to be something. This geometry had three elements in it, and sure enough, what that woman, Linclaire Dennis, saw in her near-death experience was that, surround with a sphere and some other geometric objects all around it, and God telling her, I am the source, the sun, the energy. I am the energy that forms mass and matter. Clearly what I was looking for. So I actually did the search expecting to find this in a near death experience, and I did. And it makes sense. And I worked with those people for a while. Um, Unfortunately, even though she's a near death experiencer, she's agnostic, which I found very shocking. And, I tried to say, I seem to have more faith in what you've experienced than you have. But it's just because she works with scientists and who they've gotten involved with the whole geometry and all and the mathematics, and those people influenced her thinking into being one who's now agnostic and doubting her own experience. But I don't doubt it. I think it was the real deal. And I think she brought back an important message, one that I know I needed, and I incorporated into my book. So the, it's a long process with lots of, fractal little uh, connections that brought all this theory together. Like the first paper I wrote, where I found, this was like 4 or 5 years, I just got this idea that I needed to solve this, and I wrote this paper up, and I used all these Lorentz transformation formulas, and I was able to determine that these particles that are moving in the quarks are moving in this pattern inside a neutron and proton. But not only is it moving like this, it's rolling and spinning. So what you get is a sphere, like Linclaire saw in her near death. They were associated together. And the rotating sphere is the perfect geometry to develop the contraction of space around this rapidly rotating sphere. So that's where gravity, mass come from.
Is
It's
that
an
is that why
inertial.
is that why planets are round?
Uh, you know, the roundness and the collection of, the
Or
way that
spherical?
gravity contracts, you could think of it as space is bent with all the force arrows of gravity pointing toward the center of the sphere. So yeah, your massive objects, when there's a origin or a source of a gravitational pull, is going to be spherical every time in a three-dimensional universe. And so all your planets, all your stars, there's no square stars. There's no, that just isn't supported by the way the force of gravity works. It's going to collect into a nice orderly sphere. just like this thing is doing. It comes from that, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. The same deal applies because as particles condense, they condense in a spherical shape. And so it's all very sensible. It makes perfect logical sense. The theory of superrelativity, which is basically an extension of Einstein's ideas and a completion.
So, is there like a 3 word or no, I shouldn't say that, 3 sentence um, explanation of the theory, the super relativity theory? Is there something that you can just say to someone and
Well,
they kind of get it
it is the unified
for
field
dummies?
theory.
Yeah, the unified field
So,
theory.
so I'll define the unified field theory. Basically, electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. They're just bendings of the fundamental field. So there's space, according to superrelativity, is an ether. It is a quasi-elastic solid. So I'm just going to leave that for right now, and then answer the super relativity theory. Uh, it's a metaphysical theory. So as a metaphysician, it's as a type of a philosopher, and basically what this means is I have studied the fundamental nature of reality. In other words, I studied the nature of things as they exist. So in my book, I talk about the many aspects and implications to the theory of superrelativity. Superrelativity is a reality model. It's a mechanical thing that you can see and imagine. And it's a philosophy that deals with the first principles of this material world. This includes abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. The theory over the years has evolved into a unified field theory as Einstein first envisioned that sentence I just told you about. Electromagnetism and gravity emerged as the aspects of a single fundamental field. This all makes sense. So the theory of superrelativity says, yeah, there is an ether, despite what modern day physics thinks. It's a quasi elastic solid. Quasi meaning that if you bend it a little bit using a force like magnetism or an electrostatic field, it deforms and moves a little bit and deforms into the shape. And when you remove the force, it's square, flat Euclidean space. You just imagine there's no bending at all, and it's all equal. The force and measurements are all isotropic, all the same everywhere. Uh, so that elastic means you can bend it a little. Quasi means if you bend it, it snaps back when you remove the force. So quasi, elastic, solid. Solid is the one that really trips up a lot of people. Solid in this case, in its purest sense, means that which is continuous. It's not made up of parts. It is the foundational part, the foundational substance which everything is built from. And how they manifest is through their bending. So particles are really just ultra tiny little fields, electrostatic fields, really, that have motion. And when they move through space, they cause it to bend, either magnetically or gravitationally. So that's as crushed down as I could get the theory to be, and as many sentences I can, of course, go into more detail. But basically, the final summation of all this gravity is a contraction of space caused by, in this case, for neutrons and protons, their rest mass is caused by the quarks moving in this manner. And there is a sentence I use to describe that, which goes like this. These are fundamental particles that are unbalanced charges, meaning they're not, equal amounts of negative and positive charge. They're one or the other, negative or positive. So they're fundamental, unbalanced charges. And when they move in an accelerated manner, anytime you move in circles or bends or, have angular momentum that's accelerated, when you move in that manner, space contracts in and around those moving particles. So you get that sphere because it's rapidly rotating a trefoil pattern, which is spinning and rolling. And you get a rapidly moving sphere, and around the edge of that sphere is contraction, all pulling inward toward that sphere. And that's where gravity comes from. This is the first complete explanation of how gravity works, the model itself. And that's what the mathematics I put into my second paper describes this phenomena mathematically and proves, because I get the right answers for the neutron and the proton using formulas that come from Newton's time, a moment of inertia. It all makes sense. I step through it and explain it step by step so simply even a physicist could understand it. Whether they will believe it or not, the ones that I've talked to so far were shocked and could not believe that something could come from things that are just in motion.
But
That's
isn't
the
yeah,
key.
isn't space always in motion? Is space in that motion? Is space a sphere?
Space is stationary, according to Lorenz and people of the time before the year 1905. The space isn't moving. Uh, this as a particle moves through space, what's moving, it's not like a bullet through air where the bullet is displacing the air around it as it moves. It's as if the bullet itself is in the air. Let's just put that model aside. A particle is a field, a twist of space, a vortex, and that vortex is persistent. It doesn't dissolve and melt away. And this is an indication that space is a solid, because you can't build that kind of structure in a liquid or a gas. It'll dissipate. But in a solid, it maintains its structure. And so as it moves through space, a particle is a twist, it's moving through space. That structure develops within that structure, let's say an electron or something, a cause of motion, which Einstein was looking for. And I found, and I call that cause of motion the slip wave. And so there's a pressure gradient from the front of the particle to the back, created within the medium of the ether. So the particles are consubstantial with the ether. What do I mean by that? It means they are of the same thing. They are made up of. They are the same thing as the ether. The only difference is why we detect them and we can see them is they're deformed. And this is something that's viewable, detectable with equipment and our eyes and so forth.
It has to move to see it like it's like you're.
What breathes life into the universe is the motion. And I realized this, and I continued to look for Einstein ever thinking or saying this. And he does in one of his unified field theory papers of gravitation and electricity. He says it in the last two sentences. After he wrote all these equations, all this stuff for the unified field theory, he then says, nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles yet. He was on to the same idea. That creates the universe. If particles don't move, nothing happens. Magnetic field, this is electrostatic field is a particle, it's a charge. All particles are made of charge. They're twists of space. These twists are forced to move because of their structure. When they move, space does this as the particle is moving. It rotates. That's the magnetic field, 2/3 of the way to the unified field theory. Then I came up with the last part. The last sensible explanation is more motion, specific type, accelerated motion causes the contraction of space. So you get a charged particle that's moving, and it's moving in a circular manner. Now it's accelerating. Acceleration causes the contraction of space. It causes space to contract. That's mass. That's the gravitational field. So now it's all linked, and it all happens because force is in motion. That's what we call that energy. That energy forms mass, just as God said to Lynn Claire, I am the energy that forms mass. He intentioned this physical reality. He created the whole thing, not just people on Earth, not just, in 7 days. I mean, the entire universe, right down to the last atom, was intentioned and created by the creator. And if you want to know how things work, at some point, scientists are going to have to start asking the creator. That means they're going to have to start believing in the existence of the person that created them and everything else. And this stuck in the sand head kind of they don't believe and they're agnostic or they're atheists. This is just old style thinking. It's a kind of willful ignorance where they do not want to believe that there's something greater than themselves and mankind. Well, there is,
It's
and
just that it would be hard to explain without something like just like the existence.
well,
So,
and there's loads of people that have had near-death experiences where God tells them, "I created everything," and I have an example of that on my website, my blog. Father Rick Wendell, he lays it He lays it right out. He says, all of this three-dimensional world is within God. It's- we're within God. We're part of it right now, to the last atom.
so we're in the mind of God almost.
Yes, there is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. We're inside of the mind of God. The matrix, you want to call it something that modern day people call it? You want to call it the matrix? It's the same thing. We're inside of a shared dream. And it's up to us to figure it out and learn and have positive experiences whenever we can generate them. Because our God's gift to us, humanity, each and every individual person, is your life. Your gift to God is what you do with it. So everything you do, say, think is important. Everything, everyone does. And you're going to bring back those experiences that becomes part of the Akashic record, the book of life, whatever you want to call it, as your gift, your return gift to God. So, make it a good one. So, that's part of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to contribute positively in a way that helps people figure out what's going on here and advance, not just technologically, but spiritually and emotionally.
So if the Akashic records in your unified field theory exists then,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a place.
The spirit realm exists. It's, a higher dimension. And this is where we get into the idea of what's it made of? Well, it's a higher dimension, so I'm not really sure. Uh, but it seems when you're in this dimension, you have full capacity, full powers. You can move at the speed of a god. You can think, and you're there. And that could be the other side of the universe, in another dimension, in another time. Because when you're on the other side in the spiritual realm, as far as I've been able to determine, you're outside of time, as is God. And so you can access the future, the past, the present, as many NDEs have come back and testified to. So there's
So how did you
confirmation.
I was going to say, how did you get onto NDEs? How did you go, oh, these are the people? What sparked that interest? Sorry.
Oh, I read the book by Raymond Moody many years ago, and I thought, this is important because we're talking about the greater picture, the reality. And did we come from somewhere? Do we exist beforehand? The pre-life, the pre-birth, and the afterlife. It's part of the bigger picture, which people are wondering. I know I wonder, where did I come from? Do I disappear when I die? And this kind of fit in. This made sense. Near death
What was
experiences.
what was the title of that book? Somebody was asking. Lisa
Oh,
was asking.
Raymond Moody. I mean, I can look it up real quick. Very popular title.
You know, I always
Mhm.
it's strict. It's it's kind of
And
mind blowing, and it's always been
Life After Life, I think, was the name of
life
the book.
after life. Okay, yeah. What was the one that I can't remember now? The other one by Newton, but he was a doctor. He wasn't a physicist. He did the life. Um, Sherry says, I've been struggling with being raised Baptist about a God of person, soul, or energy. Growing up, you never see pictures of God, only Jesus. So she says she's been struggling with that. So
Um, I could tell you what I've learned from near-death experiences about Jesus, some famous ones, and clearly there's an index. See, we are humans, and what is a human? Humans are avatars. So, who are you really? You are not your brain, and you are not your body. The brain and the body house the spirit while you're in this form. And when you go inside it, when you're born, you're throttled down. Your soul powers, you're disconnected somewhat from God, and you have to work your way back through meditation or whatever to reestablish that connection. And so you're limited by design so that you have to struggle to get through life. It's not supposed to be easy. And God actually says that in a near death experience to somebody who's complaining and saying, I don't want to go back. It's hard there. And he yells at, well, bellows, that the whole universe shook and says to her, it's supposed to be hard. It's the whole point. So this material world has its limitations that enable possibilities of ignorance and suffering and joy and learning and discovering, all of which is not so easily or if any possibly done on the other side, because it's a perfect realm with a complete connection to God and to love and everything. So Jesus is reincarnated into his avatar here for this planet. But according to some other near-death people, he also has done that on he claims to have done it on every planet, everywhere in this universe and all other universes. And so how does he do that? He comes down in their avatar. And then their experience is not going to be the same as ours, where he's put up on a cross. It's probably not anything like that. There's all kinds of different things, but the purpose, the function is the same. It's to teach those people, that group, that make and model of people about the spirit life, and the
that,
spirit realm. Uh,
that there's more than physical. There's a spiritual
yeah,
part of us.
there's
We're,
that it's a place. I want to say it is a place. It's at a higher dimension. It's been described to me as it's not so much above us, but it's right alongside, in parallel, sort of, and just at a higher frequency. And then if you can switch to that frequency, then you can see and sense and feel, and then you're connected to it. So somehow there's a lot of dimensions apparently all going on at the same time, just at higher frequencies or whatever. And so there's a lot of stuff that I don't get into too much in my book about that. The spirituality part, only a little. A second book, I'm going to go into that all heavily. These discussions that we're having here are all going to be in that book to answer those kind of questions.
show us a picture of your book, Mark, and describe your book and where people can find it. Because I love. Okay, so when I saw this,
There
I
it is.
knew exactly. I'm going to let the audience. I looked at it and I said, I know that album cover. So anybody here in the audience recognize
Yeah.
that
That's,
image from an album cover? Think 70s, right? It was in the
yes,
70s, right?
70s. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of you might not be in the 70s, but I have an older sister, and this was one of the ones that I was fascinated with. We used to have to listen to record players all the time, so yeah, we couldn't. And since they
Yes.
were older, we got to listen to their music. So.
Yeah, that does. Have they all guessed? Have they made their guesses?
No, it
I,
says Lisa said it looked like Merlin.
I agree. I think it looks like Merlin too.
Oh, absolutely, it looks like
Yeah.
Merlin.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's kind of what I asked the artist to do. A wonderful lady who lived in Spain.
Melinda, you should know. She says I don't have her glasses on. You have to show it again. You have to show it again. So look, Melinda.
Sherry says Pink Floyd.
Well,
Not a bad guess.
not a bad guess. Okay, you'll have to tell us where
It
you got that.
comes from Every Good Boy Deserves Favor, Moody Blues album, which has a lot of great songs on it.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that years ago as a kid, so I said, someday I'm going to use this somewhere. I didn't know, but it really resonated with me. I looked at it and it said, this means something. This is important. I just resonated with it. So eventually I gave the artist, that picture. I says, I want you to make this again, except do it like this.
Yeah. Describe what Merlin's holding or whoever's holding there. Oh, you got to make some rockin' t-shirts out of that.
Yeah. There's
I'd be
three.
number one in line for that one.
I do have a hat. Here, let me go get it.
That's
Hold
awesome.
Hold on a second. I'll show you the hat.
Yeah,
Right on.
that's cool. Do you remember that album, Teresa? You would be younger too. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
no,
would've been
I
right
actually
into it.
like the Moody Blues.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love
Oh,
that.
that's cool.
That's cool. That is so Celtic, eh? Now I wonder if I said that is so Celtic. That is so Celtic. The symbolism there too, and I'm just wondering how the Celts knew about that.
It's perfect.
Geometry.
I designed this and had somebody in New York just perfect it and draw it
That's awesome.
as I envisioned it. The triangle represents the 3 dimensions of space. So the 2 other structures you see in here, the trefoil knot, which we went over, creates the sphere, which creates gravity, which creates mass. Then all of the universe appears.
So it's godosphere.
Yeah, I call it the signature of God.
The signature of God.
The other side, who's talked to me about it through a medium, they called it the breath of God.
Wow.
And they confirmed that this is all right. So I've done things that a scientist would never do. I've consulted the creator through mediums, through NDE people, to get some of this information.
I would say you consciously consulted them. I think
willfully, consciously.
I think, yeah, you with your own mind decided. Not that sometimes God, I think, how would you say, downloads, influences, yells, whispers to them, and finally they go, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea."
You have to
But
listen.
you've acknowledged that.
Yeah, I listen. I've learned to listen to my spirit guides. I have not always done that, and it almost cost me my life at one point because I refused to listen to a warning, and I almost died that day because I did not listen to the warning, and I did what it said not to do. And only because I was made aware of a danger that was coming was I able to avert the car crash, a head-on collision, because I knew something was coming because of what happened. Would you like to hear that story?
Yes, for sure. I love stories.
This is part of my experience learning how that there are guardian angels. And I was driving home from IBM from work, and I hit an intersection. It's a T intersection. I can go left or I can go right, but I have to go one or the other. There's no straight through. Left goes through the quiet country roads. I usually chose that to relax. Or I can go right. It's a little bit quicker, but it's a lot more lights and a lot heavier traffic, and it's kind of a pain to go that way. And sometimes you get home sooner, sometimes you get home later. So I went left. But as I was approaching that intersection, I'm thinking to myself, well, which way you go? I'm going to go left today. And as soon as I thought that, I heard a voice in the left ear. Now, I'm not talking in my head like the thought voice that you hear when you think. I'm talking as if somebody were right next to my ear and speaking to me. And that person, is a male, said, "Don't go that way." And I'm in my car by myself. I whip around to see if there's somebody in the back seat. There's nobody there. And so I just shook it off and said, I don't know what that was. And then he said again, "Don't go that way." So I'm sure I'm hearing this, and it's a voice, but there's nobody there. So I'm figuring, well, this sounds like a warning. I got to know that this is real, I thought. So I went that way.
Don't
Because
do
the
that.
scientist kind of guy in me says, it couldn't be. That just doesn't happen. This is not a part of what's normal. And so I was kind of, self-doubting a little bit, even though I was sure I heard a voice. And so I'm saying, well, if it's going to be a bad thing, it's going to be a head-on collision. So I'm going to be looking ahead, watching ahead for any kind of weird something coming. Well, about 3/4 of the way home on a 2-lane road, a straight stretch, I see this truck starting to swerve, a pickup truck, and he's going into our lane, out, off the road, comes back on the road, goes into our lane, goes off the road. He's doing it over and over as if he's trying to hit somebody head on. And of course, people are going, the guy in front of me, he goes into the ditch, and then I see he's coming right at me, and I turn the wheel as hard as I can, and I go into a ditch, and we miss. I see the truck going by his side and my side, and I'm looking as it goes by, and then I wind up in this ditch, spun around, and he spun and stopped in the middle of the road. And I thought to myself, Mark, the next time somebody tells you not to go that way, don't go that way. And I apologize, and to this day, I apologize to my guardian angels who were just, that guardian angel's job is to keep me alive.
Right.
Make sure I don't exit before I finish everything that I have to do. So,
Good, wise words.
Yes.
That
Wow.
gives me goosebumps. Melinda's asking, curious if Mark has heard of Rama's School of Enlightenment, a school of quantum physics.
no. I'm not a big quantum physics fan. And like Einstein, I have a lot of problems with it. So when people start snapping or connecting the word quantum or quantum mechanics or quantum physics, I tend to shy away because there's a problem philosophically that I have with the interpretations coming from quantum mechanics. They're incorrect. They're nonsensical. They're not right. And how do I know that? Because for one thing, they don't just have one; they have like 27 or more different explanations from reality, and everybody's just spinning off of other people's ideas, and they're all throwing rocks at each other from the hill, saying, "No, it's my way. No, it's my." None of those ways are right, because there is no such thing as a force of probability. Things don't happen because of probability. Probability happens because of determination. And so there's a big void between me and quantum mechanics, as Einstein had the same problem. It's an incomplete system. So there's a lot of interesting applications that come from quantum mechanics, but I'm not familiar with and they may have some good ideas in their philosophy or whatever, because there certainly is an aspect in our reality that does appear to be random, but that's only the appearance, and all things that have appearance are not necessarily true. So, for what that's worth.
So yeah, because I guess one of the things that quantum physics says, by observing something, you've already changed.
And that's true. I don't argue with that. They don't take it far enough, though. They kind of discredit that idea in some ways. The observation, it's called a measurement problem. The observation does affect the things you're observing. So if you're trying to watch, let's say, an electron move through space, in order to do that, you got to fire photons at it and bounce off of it and then get that back and say, oh, it was here. Oh, it was there. Oh, now it's here. Now it's there. Every time you do that, you affect the flight of the electron or whatever particle, because you're interacting with it. And at that level, that scale, it's a big interaction. It's deflecting and moving in different directions. So as you observe it, you mess up the observation. So you mess up its position, you mess up its momentum, and so those things are hard. You can't get both at the same time. As soon as you observe it, you mess it up. But they want to say that's an intrinsic thing. It's really more not so intrinsic. It's just the way we work. It's a limitation of our physical reality unless we can find a way to observe something without disturbing it. And I don't know of a way to do that other than spiritually. One could look at things and see them in a mind experiment and not to disturb anything in that experiment, because it's just part of your consciousness and you're not acting on that real object, let's say an electron or something.
Like
Although
relativity.
some psychics could affect a particle, healers do, and so forth. So there's still a disturbance, but you would have to do it as a remote viewer and watch it in a passive way. And other than that, with scientific equipment, you're going to mess up the thing, the observation, the particle velocity or its position by observing it.
Yeah, there's no way going through the door without going through the door, more or less, right?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing of this physical reality. You've got to learn. You're trying to. Universe is a black box, so there's something in there you're trying to identify, right? Well, then you start doing things with the black. You shake the box. It's a rattle. You weigh the box. Does it have mass? You heat the box. You cool. Every time you do something, you're affecting the box or what's inside of the box. It's just the nature of the physical reality, and you have to learn to adjust to that and make interpretations, realizing that's part of the observation that you're affecting it.
I like what Lynn Marie said. She said, someone is spinning all this quantum quagmire. On the first appearance, it's chaotic, but so precisely positive and negative that it comes together in a literal amazement when reviewing. So it comes together in, yeah.
It's chaos is what makes the whole thing confusing, what makes it all appear to be random. In the microscopic world, everything is easily affected by the things all around it. Each particle, as it whizzes through space, it's going through air, it's going near oxygen, it's going near hydrogen, it's going near the other things, and it's slightly deviating, and so there's effects on photons as they travel through space, and other particles in liquid and so forth. They're very chaotic, but that doesn't mean that it's not sensible, it's not deterministic. It's just impossible to compute with any kind of Newtonian equations because there's just so much there. You're just never aware of all that's going on in a system like that. And so it's impossible to predict with standard calculations the path of a particle or whatever. Because there's so much going on at that level that's not accessible, we're not fully aware of, and that's just the nature of our physical reality. It's a limitation. and it's something we just got to learn to live with and do. We can The quantum mechanics sort of looks magical because they do measurements in groups, huge groups. Then they calculate the probabilities and odds, and yeah, you can get the right answer for particle collisions or whatever, because you do millions of measurements and you'll get so many of these and so many of those and so many of those. And when the equations don't match up right, you know what they do? They tune them with 27 or so ad hoc tuning parameters. So, our equations that we have right now didn't really quite match the measurements we've seen here in the lab. What if I put this one in and that one in, and I keep tuning it until I get the right answer? It's not really a great system.
Sort of sounds like my mother's recipes.
Yeah. Doesn't quite taste right until we add this parameter, this number, and multiply it in, and then it works.
Yeah, it's like how my aunt used to hand down recipes with a few things missing. Mark, so before we let you go, tell us again where people can find your book, and show it again because we love the album cover, and I do. I mean, the album cover, the book cover.
Yeah.
Which I really want to see this on a T-shirt now. Yes. I really do.
Oh, I have a T-shirt, but it's of the planet.
Yeah, we want to see that picture. That would be awesome. Anyway.
Okay. There is a T-shirt I sell on my website and the hat, along with the book.
With the God particle thing.
They're all on www.super-relativity.com. Super-relativity.com is where you can get the book, a signed copy, or if you want to get the Amazon, you can get the Amazon from Amazon, or you could get the Kindle if you like Kindle.
We want to hear it in audiobook soon.
So. Yeah, I need to look into that and see, it's going to take me a long time to read this book aloud.
Get a voice actor.
But if Audible provides the stuff, I'll give it a try. Say, hey, you give us a tape of this, and we'll put it up in an audio book. If it's that simple, I guess I can do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it goes, but it's pretty cool. I guess you'd choose the voice actor.
Yeah,
awesome idea. So you can get all Mark's links in the in the video description here, and if you're listening on our podcast, you can just look at our podcast, and all his links will be there. I want to give a shout out to Jim Perry, who, of course, I interviewed you first before us, but I heard him, and I had to listen to that podcast twice to get it, to listen to you, and I thought it was so amazing that you tied God into science so neatly, and that's where science and God should be together from the beginning.
I agree.
All created from one source.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Bex, you have some questions for Mark.
Yeah, now that my brain's back to somewhat functioning, I had a brain melting moment in the conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Well, because you mentioned that, we're in the mind of God. And so then I'm like, oh my God, we're the imagination of God. And then our imaginations are being created and they're, going to become reality. And then it just became that fractal moment of going, just continuing down the rabbit hole. And I just, my brain melted. I was gone.
The mirror through the mirror through the mirror.
Yeah.
You're grappling with the same problem I had. Where do thoughts come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, so far, what I've come up with is their memories. They're triggered by memories. And then the thought comes forward in some sort of random way or pseudo-random way. But that's as far as I've gotten so far.
Well, they say we have repetitive thoughts every day. Like most of our thoughts are repetitive. So that makes sense. We don't really have a lot of new thoughts. So.
But new thoughts, I think, come from inspiration, from help from the other side, and creation comes from the creator, and the creator comes through us, either directly or through an intermediate person, a spirit guide or guardian angel, something of that nature. So there's that aspect. And I fully believe in that, and I fully use that, and don't apologize for it. I will never apologize, because that's the way it is. That's the way it works. And let's all learn to do it and advance.
It's all about
Instead
the
of
whole.
Mark will be up there saying, "I told you so."
Right, exactly. So do you agree that we are the creator in human form?
We are a part of the, we're not the creator ourselves. We are a part, a thought. I've heard it described as, maybe we're a thread in the tapestry of God, and our lives are threads in our tapestry. So you see the fractal kind of thing that's going from all of this, how it builds. This tapestry is a part of a strand of the bigger God tapestry, sort of like the drawings behind you there. It's very complicated because we're trying to understand in a finite form, infinite things, eternal things, like where did God come from? Well, he was always here. How could he always be here? There must be a beginning, because we all in this world only have beginnings and endings. We're not familiar with forever on anything. Nothing lasts forever here in this universe. Nothing. Except the universe itself. But it oscillates. And that's in my book.
Wouldn't there be a creator of the creator then? Like, it just keeps
I
going.
know, it's just hard.
It just keeps going. And my brain is just not. Okay, let's get to the questions, because I'm going to have another meltdown in a second.
I know. You're experiencing my 3-year-old self thinking about the creator of the creator. Yeah, I know.
It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
Okay, first question. If you had to choose a song to be the theme song of your life, what would that be?
Well, the individual song I would pick would be Go Now, because of the dream I had. I don't know if you want to go through the whole dream, but I had this dream with a witch, freezing lightning bolts, killing everybody, freezing my brothers. I free myself, destroy the witch, but I'm walking home from the lake crying because my friends are dead and my brothers are frozen. Then the song Go Now from the Moody Blues comes into the dream. And then all of a sudden I look behind me and my friends are alive and my brothers are breaking free from the ice, the frozen ice statues that they were. And I'm happy. And then I wake up, and here's where things get a little strange. I go to the window and look out to the backyard to see if it was real. I'm about 10 years old. And, so there I am with my eyes wide open, and I'm looking out to see if what happened in my dream was real. And then the music is playing from the radio. My mom's making breakfast. And so just after that, my father comes home and say, we're moving to Florida. So that song becomes like a harbinger of things and the good things that are going to happen. But I can never get this song and that dream out of my mind. For the next 5 years, 1970, I go to the store looking for this book every weekend. I'm looking for this song. And one weekend I find the song on a new album put out by the Moody Blues, which is now 1970. This is 64, 65 when I heard the song. 1970, I'm 15 or so. And I see there's this picture of a boy with his eyes wide open, and behind him is like a sunrise kind of thing. And I see on the label, it says Dream. And I get all excited. And I whip around the book, the thing, and Go Now is the first song on it. So I bring it home, I buy it, bring it home, tell my mom all about it. I said, I had this dream, and this is it. And it's a boy on the book, just like me, that was looking out the window. And I looked at the label again. It didn't say Dream. It said Durham. But I saw Dream. And so that's the rest of the story. So that song, I associate with my life in general. If I hear that song, something good is going to happen. And but then there's the song that I associate with super relativity, and that's New Horizons by the Moody Blues. And then the song for my mission in life, I associate with My Song by the Moody Blues, which talks about aliens and life and just making discoveries. So that's kind of my theme for my life's purpose, is to make awareness of the aliens, the alien technology, and spiritualism and God, and how
that's a whole other show where
that'll be another episode.
So that's the song question answer.
Yes.
if we're coming up to alien season in my part of the world, it's the fall usually when they come in. So come down to visit. So go ahead. Back to
Yeah,
you.
that was very cool. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
that's
Okay.
awesome.
Second question is what's your favorite crystal?
Oh, emerald. Emeralds. I just think they're beautiful. Green.
Yeah.
I like that green.
They are absolutely gorgeous. Okay, third question. Have you ever experienced extra-dimensional intelligence, meaning UFOs, visitations?
Yeah, several times. Briefly, once in Miami, while I was out at the pool at night, me and some other people looked up in Miami, the night sky, there's no stars. It's just too much light pollution. But they were very bright. They were the only things in the sky, 7 of them, one over the other, bobbing up and down slowly. And then one by one, they went straight up. It was in the newspapers the next day. Thousands of people saw it. The next time I had an encounter, it was a very close encounter. I woke up in the middle of the night to get some water, and I saw this green and red flashing lights outside of the house. And there was a big oblong shaped thing over the lake about 50 to 75 yards from my house. It was big as my house. And I woke up my wife and I got her and made her look, and we looked at it for about 5 minutes until it slowly drifted off to the west. So those are my two classic UFO, definitely UFOs. They were unidentified. They were not anything of this earth, in my opinion.
That's awesome. Those
One
are
of the
love
one
that.
of the other images of God. That's what I would
Yes.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course I had visions of my guardian angels at night in my bedroom. That's a spiritually transformative thing, going through all of those, and that's for another book. That's because there's quite a few stories there.
Yeah, that's going to be an awesome book.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay. So much information. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yes.
And we really, really appreciate you taking the time and to come and have to just explain this and make it a little bit more tasty
I
because,
want to leave
because
with
it's a big thing for us.
one parting thought. This universe, everything in it, all of it is made from space. It's the only thing that really physically exists. Everything else is made from it. Know that and you'll understand my theory perfectly. Everything comes from space. This real physical object that was created is God, in my opinion.
Space is gone. Cool.
Yes.
That's so true.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that for a while.
Yeah. Down the rabbit hole.
Thank you so much. And join us on the Breakthrough Network show, the Breakthrough Network. Take a look at them this every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, I believe. Jessica Dua has her Project Joy. Join her live on her Facebook page or on the Breakthrough Network show YouTube. There's shows throughout the week, and we're so excited to be part of that network. And thank you again, Mark, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Oh, we gotta just announce the winner.
Yeah.
The winner
Okay.
of the Soul Spa meditation is, I'm going to mess this up, I'm sorry,
Nope.
Gao Matsami, I think is how we say it. I'm not sure. But yes, so that's the winner. And thank you guys all for hanging out. And I think we're hoping we have Ron Schaefer next week. That's our tentative plan. If not, we will have a surprise.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be here. I'll be up in Yukon.
Yay.
So, yeah, have a great week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.